Today, we're taking a room from this demolished state, this is new, to this Hemi-Anechoic chamber. We're building one of the most advanced sound chambers of any independent reviewer that we're aware of, meaning that we're not building it to then sell services to companies whose products we review, because that's a conflict. Instead, we're investing $250,000 into this chamber to provide even better product analysis for our consumer reviews, and we've already used it and have our first data. The chamber is being built by this guy, David Engdall from Viking Enterprises, and he knows a lot about sound chambers.
And we utilize 3 Hz springs on the proper spacing for the weight displacement. Being a 150 Hz chamber, if you generate, like say there's a 150 Hz sound wave in this room, it should only make 1 cycle and be captured on the other end. The depth of treatment directly correlates to the lower cutoff frequency.
Dave's US-based company is one of the leading experts in the world for anechoic chambers. In fact, Dave built Logitech's fully anechoic chamber that we looked at years ago. And he's been involved in several high-profile chamber builds for silicon designers and chip manufacturers that you all know. Now, we'll have our own chamber to validate the claims of manufacturers, and we also recruited now retired veteran Mike Chin, highly regarded founder of Silent PC Review, as a consultant to teach us about proper acoustic testing from one of the only independent media outlets to ever do it right, in our opinions. This is our single biggest investment ever in the company and what we do, and we've kept it a secret for half a year now. In fact, our fan testing couldn't advance until we introduced this chamber to have complete analysis, exactly how we wanted, of noise alongside performance. And now that we have this piece, we're moving together with both in unison. Our new ITX and updated ATX case reviews are the first to use the chamber, and while that data is ready, we first need to lay the foundation, the build, with lessons from Dave. This video is brought to you by us and store.gamersnexus.net, which currently has a special 10% off promo code. Just type code CHAMBER at checkout. This is the only way we could ever hope to fund the advanced level of testing that we're continually investing in. Products like our anti-static PC building mod mats, our soldering and project mats with high versatility for all manner of work, and our mouse mats with color rubber undersides and stitched borders are what allow us to spend $250,000 on this chamber. Other technical media outlets have historically explored selling test services to the very companies whose products they review when adding higher-end equipment. But we're committing today to continue blocking paid work for any conflicting companies in order to maintain full independence. That's why we need you to continue supporting us. Best of all, we already have data on this chamber in videos coming up. If you like what we're doing and you want to get a high-end product in return, like one of our coaster packs that we've been showing or some of our cobalt blue pint glasses, head over to store.gamersnexus.net today and type in code CHAMBER at checkout. For sake of stamping, it's June 9th. I think we've got 2 weeks of construction, and that starts in a few days. This 3-part build series will teach you what this chamber enables us to do, like ultra-precise noise measurements and frequency spectrum plots. And this first part will contain a unique combination of raw technical and construction discussion with Dave, so you all get to learn right alongside us. We're doing this so we can eliminate variables in the surrounding environment, and we've even had our chamber certified by a third party to ISO standards that we'll talk more about in the next part. But for this video, it all starts with measuring the room. Okay, so we are with Dave now. Dave has been standing all this up and building it. Dave, quick, who are you? What do you do?
Hi, I'm David Engdall. I'm the Senior Superintendent for Viking Enterprises Incorporated. We specialize in building anechoic chambers. We do a majority of our work for Echo Industries and build their chambers, and this is what we do. We build large chambers.
The specific type of chamber that Dave is building for us is called a Hemi-Anechoic chamber. We chose this type for a number of reasons, but one of them is for a more accurate representation of a real environment. We'll let him explain more.
A Hemi-Anechoic chamber is an anechoic chamber with a hard floor, a hard surface. And the reason that we have the hard surface is you want some reflection in the chamber. A full anechoic chamber is 100% wedges. That's the cable floors that you see, or sometimes the grating floor. But with this right here, you're going to have a Hemi-Anechoic surface. We'll have a couple different floor conditions to apply to this room and as we go.
Earlier you were doing laser measurements.
Correct.
For the floor.
But we shoot that with a laser and then we adjust every single one of the springs.
Right.
We use polymer shims, so they hold under compression and weight loads, and we lock them all in, and we get the floor exactly where you want it. It's essential on a room with springs. If you don't start off with a completely level floor, you end up having the characteristics of, you know, sawtoothing or panels not connecting correctly, and then you have a sound gap. So it's essential that you start off correctly, you know?
Yeah, this is also elevated.
Correct.
So can you walk me through the springs?
Absolutely. What we do is we have an isolated floor support system underneath here, which we make out of a structural channel. And we utilize 3 Hertz springs on the proper spacing for the weight displacement. And what that does is that allows us to start off with a decoupled chamber, and also we can level everything off perfectly and get everything where we want it. You have 3 Hertz springs, which means that everything that's cut off above 3 Hertz, we can control that. We can cut off any kind of attenuation noise above 3 Hertz.
Right.
The chamber itself is a 150 Hertz chamber. So your cutoff frequency will start at 150 and go up to 10,000 to 20,000 Hertz, depending on how you run it. Basically, putting it on the 3 Hertz springs, you isolate your slab in your room from anything else in this building. Now, what we always do is anything that comes to this building has to be decoupled. So when you bring your electronics and your electrical here through the regular power, we bring that through what electricians call it seal tight, which is non-metallic. So there's no way we can get any vibration or any kind of noise transmission in the room itself. And the reason we stay off all the other walls, so we don't get close enough that we can get a flanking path or a vibration at higher frequencies from any other external walls. Because conduit can resonate, conduit can make sounds. So we try to limit what we have in here, and we always try to maintain the proper fasteners, proper locations of fasteners, and then keep that integrity in mind.
As interesting as the floor is, it's still just a floor. And next we need to learn about how the walls are constructed to help with blocking the noise, but also creating the environment we want to capture the noise.
So we start off trying to achieve a perfectly silent shell, you know, a very acoustic shell. And then from there we add the treatment inside to give you the anechoic property. We call this AirCore insulation. They think that this is a foam panel like you would have in a clean room, but it's not. The panel itself is a structural panel. We use a 16 gauge skin on the outside, and we have a 20 gauge skin on the inside. We have what we call our magic of our composition of materials that is inside. So basically with this kind of panel, you get the acoustics of close to like a 7-inch CMU concrete wall.
Okay.
And what you know is, you know, with acoustics, you want mass.
Floor, is it the same principle here?
Well, the floor is, but we use a different type of system. We use a heavier gauge top sheet, and our components are a little bit more rigid due to the fact that it is a floor. And we use a 10 gauge top sheet, which is heavier than most in the industry, but as far as the performance with Echo in our studies, this works out really well.
The question I have for everyone is, general understanding of metal is that it tends to reflect things. When you build a chamber like this, why metal? What do you end up doing as you complete the chamber to deaden any sort of...
When this room was complete, if we didn't have any wedges on it, this would be like what we call a reverb room. It'd be super reflective. Right. It'll just be bam, you know, you put some music in here, it'll just be really loud. You know? But with our wedge system and our track system, and we have, you know, a lot of calculations in that once it's achieved is super quiet. The main reason for metal is structural integrity of the chamber. And also with anything with acoustics, you want mass. You want to add to your mass and you want to add to your density. So what we have inside the panel needs to be supported with our skeleton, so to speak. So we have our structural steel skeleton. There's a lot of components that are going in there vertically and horizontally, locking in every one of these panels. So on the case of a seismic activity or anything like that, you have that, but you need the mass for the acoustics. If you don't have the mass, then you can't achieve what you want for a baseline, because when you close the door, if you got outside noise entering the chamber through the walls, it defeats what you're doing inside. So we use 2 types of wedges, fiberglass wedges and metal wedges. They both perform differently and the higher frequencies. As far as the data that we've done from the perforated metal wedges, for the application that you're using, will work better for you.
The wedges themselves, the things that absorb the noise and help us get the noise floor and characteristics we want, there are a lot of reasons to build them in different ways, and we'll talk about that more later in the video once they go in. Before we get there, let's talk about how the air conditioning is handled. This is critical because we need some airflow so it's not a tomb, but also so we can run heat-loaded tests and track the fan curve in real time while still maintaining a target ambient temperature. But AC is loud, and we have to figure out a way to deal with that noise. Unfortunately, someone else has done that for us, and Dave can explain it. I mean, I know what this is, but I'll let you explain it.
Well, that's a screen window.
Yeah.
You know? This is
That's
actually
the balcony.
Yeah, that's the balcony.
That's so we can charge the tenants extra.
Yeah, that's where the wizard is a very busy man. He sticks his head out the window. You're going to have a horizontal silencer, and it's going to be mounted externally on the wall, and that's going to be lagged into your AC. So your AC will come in through this. This will be your supply. And on this opposite wall over here, we'll have your return. So you'll have your airflow will come through your room and keep your room at the ambient temperature you desire.
Why flex? Why so much flex? We talk about that too, avoiding hard angles, stuff like that.
Yeah, you want to have your airflow controlled as far as, you don't want any sharp angles or tight angles. And so if you're bringing the airflow into the chamber, when you have a height restriction like what you have here, you can't go and utilize hard ductwork. And if you did, it would be line ductwork, which you did here, which is perfect. But when you want to bring it into the chamber, you want the entry of the airflow to be long, and you want it to be a nice gradual turn. Right. So the airflow kind of cascades its way in. Any kind of sharp turns, you're going to start making turbulence in the ductwork, which will start acting noise before you get to our attenuators. Right. I mean, once you reach our attenuators or our silencers, it really slows it down and defeats it. But everything you've done here is just add into the magic and make it work a heck of a lot more.
So what's your next step?
Our next step is finishing. We're going to set these panels here. We got a beam coming in here this afternoon.
You got a door at some point that'll be over here, I think.
Yep,
right?
you have two doors here. You have a door on the outside that opens out, which is your acoustical door with 4 magnetic seals on it. Then inside you'll have a cage door.
Right.
And that'll, because you want to have a simulation inside the room of 100% anechoic.
Yeah.
And if you don't have wedges on the door, then you have a spot that's not going to be anechoic.
Yeah.
You know, the guys are getting the ceiling panels prepped and ready, and they're putting the air core insulation. And to get back to that, the reason we use this is we don't like to have, we use a double joint system. We use an acoustical caulk that we calibrate the size of the bead, and that goes into the batten system, which we call the these are H battens. And what we have is inside the corners of these H battens, we seal them with acoustical caulk. Then with the insulation inside, that way the airspace that's not contained in what's caulked, there's no reverberant noise.
Okay.
And even below this floor, there's insulation, even though the panels are insulated around the perimeter, it's also insulated underneath the floor. So say if there was some reverberant noise that was bouncing around, it wouldn't create an echo chamber under the chamber.
Right.
It gets captured in there as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that's
so
smart.
you have
Right.
every little facet has been looked into.
Yeah.
So you have a really excellent spot, a great chamber coming up. Can't wait to give it to you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next updates. So thank you for walking me through it.
No problem.
And we'll catch up soon.
All right, take care.
Okay, so we have an update. It's been only 1 day since the last clip we filmed.
Yeah.
And already a huge amount of progress. Before I get the update from Dave, let me just, this is currently a reverb chamber. So there's like a 2 or 3 second reverb, which is insane. It just keeps bouncing around. So Dave, I don't know if we built the wrong chamber or.
Well, if you want us to continue it, well, it always starts off like a reverb, like we mentioned yesterday. And from the next steps will be the wedges.
Yeah, so what did you end up working on the last day?
Well, today what we did is we secured the beam last night before we left.
Yeah.
And everything structurally secure before the end of every day, every work day. Today we installed all the ceiling panels, and we installed this whole front wall and side wall, locked everything in. Everything now is plumb, true, it's square, it's ready to go. We have the finishing touches to do. We have the door frame to install. And then we're going to start the wedge track, and then we'll start wedges.
So we took some shots of the clearance between the
bar joist. Yep.
Bar joist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Before we were compressed, you had 2 inches. Now you had 2.5. Now you have exactly 2 inches.
Okay.
So it's enough for acoustics. We're there, so we're far away from it. But she's really shoehorned in there. You got the bang for the buck as far as fitting it in there.
Right.
You know? There's still stuff that's really close. It's tight up there. We have one of our technicians up there, and he can barely move. We only have one guy that can kind of meander his way through. It's extremely tight.
Yeah. So
but that's what you want. You want the largest size in the space.
Smallest space.
Smallest space. But, you want to get the absorption in there, you know?
What's the next step at this point?
Well, the next step, like I just briefly hit on, is just so we got to go inside, finish. If you look at up the top of the ceiling area, you can see we still have fiberglass exposed.
Yeah.
We have a skirt that goes around that. It's a roof apron that cleans all that up, and everything else. We have the door frame that goes in. We have an acoustical brace that goes inside, and we have some, acoustical caulking that has to go on top, and some closure pieces. And then we're basically at the point to start doing the layout for the wedge track.
And then we'll check in whatever the next major step is at this point. So.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We left Dave and his team to make some more progress, and then we checked back in the next day. So we're at about 10 days since starting this build out. These guys move fast. The floor goes in now, and then after that, a very complicated assembly for the door of the chamber.
This chamber has an inner door and an outer door. We have the outer noise seal door with the magnetic seals, and this is the inner door that goes and swings into the chamber, which your wedges will actually mount on this face, so when the door is closed, you have the full anechoic properties. This is a sound deadening matting that we put in there. It kills any reverberant noise off the metal skin. So what we do is we'll have insulation in there as well, and then the wedge will come on top of that, so you'll have no attenuation of the higher frequencies from that thin metal. To have the test properties correct, you need to have the same wedge configuration on the inside. So this way here, when the door is closed and you're inside the chamber, it's all wedges. You don't see any doors, you don't see anything else, and the only way you'll know where the door is you'll see the wedges on this wall, they run horizontally, because when this door opens up,
it's got a socket.
They nest into each other, exactly. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a heavy duty sound door. You get STC 53 in the door, and what we have is quad magnetic seals. So you'll have a magnetic seal that adhere to this section here, and where these bolts are, we have another piece that bolts on here, which catches another seal. So when this door closes, it's closed. Without the cage door closed, this door will stop any kind of sound from coming in the chamber at all.
Do you have to do anything special on the threshold?
Yeah, we have a special seal on the bottom. This bottom threshold is made out of 3/4 inch solid steel, so it's very straight. And on the bottom of our door itself, which is against the wall covered up right there, we have a compression seal. So it's a neoprene seal, so it's basically like a balloon towards the bottom. And we'll set the pressure on that, so when the door closes, you have friction, but it doesn't enable you not to close the door. It'll allow you to close the door. The neoprene will go up. It'll make a beautiful soundproof seal at the bottom of the door. The magnets will engage. It'll suck the door closed, and bam, you got it.
Cool. That's cool.
And we have our bearing assemblies inside of here, brace washers, thrust bearings. And we put this assembly together. It's a tubular frame, and you can't have any deflection to it. That's why we use a solid Schedule 40 pipe in there. So when this bottom plate captures the bottom of the door, we use this bearing assembly.
Yeah, this thing's crazy looking.
Yeah, this is pretty intense, and it goes against the wall, and we have a mounting plate that we put into our walls that actually will support this. And then we have this bearing assembly right here that locks in, and then we take the top of our door and we machine this so it receives this nicely like this. And then once we set this in place, we have 3 Allen head set screws that will lock that in. You're going to probably have approximately in the weight capacity, probably have 600, 700 pounds.
Okay, so that's the real reason.
And you'll open it with your finger.
How about inside? Now we can actually film in here. The noise is pretty, it's starting to be real. So you want to start with the ceiling, the floor? Where do you want to start?
Well, yeah, like you said, you have a lot to update since our last one. Well, the ceiling's completed. You can see the MC cable coming down from the ceiling. This is all rough in. We'll have that cut. It'll go back in. It'll tie into our light assembly. And basically all these lights are connected through. They'll daisy chain together. You have the layouts for your microphones, and that's all these hangers that are up here in the air. We use the SO cable due to the fact that it's solid rubber on the outside, so it doesn't resonate like a conduit would resonate. When we're all done, we'll tie this into a bell box with a stainless steel cover plate. We'll put acoustical felt on the back side of the box so you can slide it on this beautiful LVT floor.
Yeah.
And we don't want to scratch.
Yeah.
So the floor panels themselves have a 10 gauge top skin on there. It was pretty thick. 10 gauge is a little bit over 1/8 of an inch. So that's our top skin, and that's a lap joint, so it's a really tight acoustical seal for us. And then once we do that, what we do is we run perpendicular to that. We run it's called zip board. It's a pre-engineered heavy-duty tongue and groove plywood, and we run that perpendicular to the floor. So our floor panels we're running this way, and then we run this way with the zip board. Then on top of that, then you have your LVT flooring, which has an underlayment in there as well, which gives you another sound absorber as well.
The tongue and groove we talked about off camera, but is also significant for assembly. And can you walk through why you prefer that as opposed to
square
plywood?
stuff?
Yeah,
the tongue and groove, you want a subfloor wood, you want a high-end board. That's why I kind of trademarked it when I call it the zip board, but it's a pre-engineered tongue and groove. It's made for flooring, for sheathing on walls. It has a high strength to it. It doesn't deteriorate. It can get wet. It won't mold. It doesn't have a lot of other characteristics that plywood would have.
Right.
And also being tongue and groove, when you screw it down to the floor, if you have square edge plywood, you have to put a lot of screws along the seams, and then those seams can eventually pop, which can create a flanking path, or it can create just a squeak. You know,
Right.
you don't want the two edges of the boards just to squeak to each other.
Yeah.
Tongue and groove, there's no way. It's a squeak-proof floor.
We got back to talking about the silencer for a little bit because it's a very important part and a very specialized part of this build that a lot of sound chambers don't accommodate. For the most part, we'll disable all the building AC when we run these tests. However, in scenarios where we need to run a heat load on the system, we still need air supply to the room. And we'd also like air supply to the room when people are setting up for tests so it's not stuffy. So here's some more from Dave about how that works, and then also how the wedge track works.
We bump it so it's radiused, because you want to do is you want to have the airflow. You don't want your airflow to come against a flat surface, because you get turbulence, and turbulence is noise. So we bump the end of it so it's radius and it's conical on the outside, so the airflow kind of cascades around it. It enters the silencer very easily. The silencer it's like a large muffler if you want to look at it in that perspective. But on the inside, like you notice that the baffling and the perforated metal, there's sound absorption material inside that. So it's a huge silent cavity.
Right.
So if you got another end of it and just yell at the top of your voice, we wouldn't even hear you.
Well, you had actually it's still up there.
Yeah, the radio
one of your
was in.
speakers, yeah. Because you were showing me the other day, like pulling this out, not changing the volume, putting it back, and the amount of like the dB drop it is insane.
Yeah, well, it deadens it as soon as it goes in there. You can't even hear it in the room. And now we have these corners are all prepped. I mean, if you look at the way our assembly is as far as the spacing, it's all because of our internal treatment. Now, Connor and I built all those this morning, so they're all pre-assembled to go into these corners. The floor is completed. We're going to hang this cage door, this inner cage door, then we can start with the interior treatments. So right now, they're in a kind of a rough scenario. We have them just up there. We're getting ready to do that door that we were talking about.
And so Connor's bringing in more wedges now.
Yeah,
so then
we're getting ready to start the walls.
Yeah.
So this elevation is critical for us. We start right here. We'll have our corner fill piece here, and then we'll feed from back here. Like I mentioned, our wedges slide in.
Yeah.
So this area here allows us to slide in. So we can build this wall, then we build this treatment in this corner. We'll build this wall. We'll do the treatment in that corner. We'll build that wall, and then we kind of close off at the door.
over the next day or two, the team finished the project, and it looks amazing. We still have plenty of exterior touches to do, and we'll cover those in the next two parts of this series, alongside the validation from a third party that the chamber works as it should. The attention to detail here from Dave and team really shines through. And a massive shout out again to John, our general contractor, for all the work that he put into the project, including some of the finer touches. You can see traces of all of the team's detail everywhere in these shots, but it's best to hear about some of the finishes and the technicals from, once again, Dave. It's done, and the surrounding room is getting close to done also. So this has been a hell of a project. Got a couple things loose, like we're waiting on AC contractors to come in and finish some of this stuff. Ceiling tiles, I'll talk about separately, but these are an acoustic, actually he recommended them, acoustic ceiling tile.
Yeah, it's the Armstrong Tundra. It's a very dense style. It's excellent for acoustics.
Yeah, so we're trying to even kind of deaden the outside room too. This is the pass-through. This is probably worth talking about because anywhere there's a hole in the chamber is a place for sound to get in.
We have 3 pass-throughs here. This way you can separate your low voltage from your high voltage. And what it is, we make the composition of this to replicate the exact panel itself. So it's the same thickness and the same noise deadening and STC quality as what the wall is. There's a vestibule inside of there that's full of insulation and sheetrock. And what we did is we manufactured this out of an ABS plastic, so it has a high density to it. And what you see on the outside, you also have it on the inside. So you have a complete dense cavity there. So like Connor just showed, like if you were going to run like your low voltage through here, you have enough separation to run your high voltage in here, and then say if you had a specialty test and there was a certain plug that you were trying to run, you could actually fit the plug with its end on it and through the other one.
And this is something that Dave ended up fabricating in basically the backyard on Sunday.
Yeah, we did on Sunday.
And it came out great.
Thank you.
All handmade. So.
Thank you. It took a little bit of a. It was an endeavor, especially with the heat. It came out nice, though. It came out beautiful.
Yeah, you made some comments about the heat that we won't repeat on camera, but they were very entertaining.
Yeah, but you have a chamfered, everything's a chamfered edge, and we have a gasket behind this and also a gasket on the interior.
So these are the switches. One is for the interior outlets.
Correct.
And one's for the lights. And that, we should also bring up the gap between the chamber and the ceiling is intentional, too.
Correct. The chamber, like we know, is on 3 Hertz springs, so the chamber is actually live. It moves. So you want to make sure the chamber is always decoupled.
Yeah.
And this is what you have right now.
I think our audio levels will probably, do they sound different, Vitaly?
It's quieter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better.
So our I don't know how much it'll pick up on camera, but the last chamber I filmed in was a fully anechoic one. I remember it feels like it sucks the bass out of the voice sometimes because you lose all that reverb.
Correct.
So, yes.
You'll notice a lot of people going like this.
Yeah. The only echo I'm hearing is outside the chamber.
Yes.
So.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. Let's start with the door. This thing is a massive door. There's 2 of them.
Connor, can you get the outside door, please?
Yeah. So here we have Connor, expert build technician, who's
acoustical technician.
coming clutch. So this outside door, I feel like I'm like doing my normal projection and shouting, but it feels so unnecessarily loud.
So when you close this door, you have the seal to the chamber. This is what's sealing off your chamber. Then we construct this door here, which we call a wedge basket door. You can close that one if you want.
Yeah, and this interior door is also, it's pretty cool just because the way it sockets into the other wedges.
And then this is a magnetic seal on this one as well. So when it closes, it holds it shut. And now you have the anechoic property. Because if you didn't have the wedges on the door, it wouldn't have the same results for the test of the chamber.
Other small features, you have a foam door stop in here.
Correct.
It's like small touch stuff, just prevent paint from chipping if they hit each other.
It give you a soft stop for your door as well. So when you open the door, you don't engage the 2 wedges together. So like you said, they won't get locked, they won't scrape each other, and it makes a nice finishing touch.
You painted the handle chassis, I guess, frame.
Yeah.
And it actually looks really nice. I like that.
Thank you.
That metal.
Well, it looked like it accentuated with the blue.
Yeah.
I mean, this is your custom blue color, so this color really looks impressive. It's beautiful in there.
The floor also, we can see now, it's been under cardboard for about a week.
Correct.
And this came out really nice too.
Yeah, so that was your choice on that as well. And it works out really nice because you have the underlayment and it pops in there instead of the regular vinyl VCT. This is a first. This is a really, it's a high-end floor, but it's a beautiful floor.
How about the ceiling? We haven't talked about really at all other than the wedges. So can you walk me through, like, why is that mesh rack there between the light and the wedge and anything else that
Okay. Well, what we do is with this chamber here, like we're going back to the beginning, you had very tight height constraints.
Yeah.
So you couldn't bring in any of the electrical through the roof to where independent boxes were on the roof for a UL inspection. So what we did is we had to bring the wiring inside the chamber. So it's daisy chained together with an MC cable. So those brackets there will put everything together in one unit with a UL listed box that can be inspected by an electrician, can be serviced by yourself. If you have an issue with the box, it's easily accessible as 2 screws on either side. You drop this down and then you can remove it and do your work on it. Also, the elevation, like you noted, is very important because you want the the bottom of the light to be above the peak of the wedge. So this is set for 1 inch inside the wedge. If it's any higher, you get shadows. If it's any lower, you get reflections.
Right.
So you really want to just make sure you got that the right desired height.
Give John a shout out too. He's our normal GC, did the whole building.
Yeah, the electrical here, like we mentioned before, we design it, we like to use an SO cable. And the reason we do this is because we can also put acoustical felt on the box. This way when the box is on the floor and it slides around, it doesn't have any noise, and also it won't damage the box or the floor if somebody drops it.
Or drags it
or
with the
or
screws exposed,
Yeah, and instead of putting the plug on the wall, where you're actually bringing a cord to here, and you're actually always pulling on that, which eventually is going to loosen up.
Yeah.
This right here brings your power source to you here. So say you bring it to here, and you set it down. This is an SO cable. It's a heavy cable, so it stays to the floor. It's not a trip hazard.
Right.
It brings your power to where you want. We have 2 of them located in there, so you have 8 outlets in this chamber, which is quite a few, knowing that you can also bring in power there.
Yeah.
Then afterwards, you just roll this back up, and you're doing a test, and you just basically tuck it away.
I want to make sure anyone in the audience, I know a lot of engineers from like AMD, Intel, NVIDIA watch our stuff, especially this kind of stuff. So I want to make sure everyone in any kind of decision-making position from those companies understands that stuff like the felt on the boxes is a Dave and Viking attention to detail type thing, where like people who watch our reviews, I think you all are very familiar with everything we talk about. It's all attention to detail. The biggest time we kind of have praise or criticism for like PC building companies, it's bad or good attention to detail. So it's the small touches that, the way I always look at it is, if you got someone who's putting felt on a box so it doesn't scratch the floor, then he's probably doing a pretty good job with all the big stuff that really matters.
And not to mention touching up screw heads, so you don't have everything's painted, everything matches. In the early days, people you go that so far that you paint every screw head? I'm like, yeah. I always like, but you know what? Like end users like yourself that are into that realm of, precision, will look at that painted screw head and they look at it and say, geez, that's a quality thing.
Right.
So they look at that as if they're painting screw heads and they're felt in boxes, I feel comfortable that they did the right procedures on building my chamber.
Yeah.
So it is something that, few people recognize it, but the ones that do, it's important. So thank you.
Yeah. How about it's on a technical side, so like geometry of the wedges. We were kind of getting into some of the wedge discussion previously. You know something about, I guess, the original sort of wedge designs and some of the decisions or history there.
Eckel uses the stuff from Dr. Leo Baranek. He was an MIT professor, and he actually built the first chamber in Harvard, I think. I think it was just after World War II. But the wedge geometry is critical to how the wedge performs in the chamber. I mean, you have the slope of the wedge, you have the flat or the landing of the wedge, and you have the depth of treatment of the wedge. The depth of treatment directly correlates to the lower cutoff frequency. So if the wedge is longer, the correlation for the cutoff frequency is going to go lower and lower.
Okay.
And then the size of the chamber and all that works relative too.
That was one of the things we had looked at 100 hertz chambers as an option. One of the, I guess it makes sense. And I was trying to remember why we didn't do it other than cost. And I think you start losing more usable space in the room.
Correct.
And we physically can't fit a larger room, so.
Correct. You need, all that is the geometry. You have to work it all together with your space. Because the lower the frequency, the bigger the wedge. And so the bigger the wedge, the bigger the chamber.
Right.
Unless you have, like you say, you have no space.
Yeah.
But what we use here is, Eckel is 50% perf used to be used a lot. Eckel's found out that using 53% perf gives us like almost 100% transparency. Even though you see a metal wedge, the studies that we've done on this give us 100% transparency for absorption, which is fantastic. And with a metal wedge, there's 3 factors that you look at. You look at the thickness of the material, what the wedge is made of. You look at the size of the diameter of the hole, and then you look at the open perf size. And that kind of works in that correlation along with that same formula of Dr. Baranek. So like I mentioned, this is 53%. So you have like no 0%, you have 100% transparency. I think they brought it up to like around 10,000 hertz. It's like zero transparency. You don't catch the metal at all as a reflection. It's all absorbed. Cool. So it works really, really well.
That's cool.
It's a fantastic wedge too. The Dr. Baranek, right? He went to Cornell, I believe, and he went to Harvard as well. He worked on his geometry. And Eckel Industries, back in the day, there was Oliver Eckel. He was the founding member of Eckel. And he worked directly with Dr. Baranek on design. And Dr. Baranek would kind of design the wedge, and then Oliver Eckel would build the wedge. Then they would test the wedge. Then they would design it, then they would build it, and then they would test it. They would test it like an impedance tube, which is a long tube that they put the wedge at the other end, and they'd put the microphone in there. And then by changing the location of the microphone, they could do the different testing as far as on the wedge.
Okay.
So it was a lot of research and development. That was right after World War II. And they built the first chamber, if I'm correct, I think it was at Harvard is where they built it.
Cool.
You know, so it's I think it still might be out there. I'm not sure.
That's the chamber walkthrough. I'm excited to start using it. I think Patrick's going to be in here pretty much immediately to start figuring out the test setup. And Patrick was our clutch door technician as well on the door. So, but yeah,
it was great. I also want to add something too that to your viewers that Steve's the real guy. I mean, he's just like you see him on TV and on the views. He's a good guy, a straightforward guy. He's given us a lot of hospitality. We really enjoyed this build, and I just want to thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for everything.
Absolutely.
Sincerely.
Thank you.
And Connor has really enjoyed working with you, and also the knowledge on the gaming, because Connor's the big gamer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, you guys did a great job, and thank you everyone for watching this segment. We'll have some more after this to talk about how the chamber works. So, Dave, thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Of course, this build didn't go without its challenges, but the team that we had on site here did excellently to tackle them as they came up. We'll have part 2 where we do the validation of this chamber soon, and we actually have already used this for the Fractal Terra in our upcoming ITX reviews and the ROG Ally. And as always, go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly, because it's going to take a while to pay this off. You can use code CHAMBER for 10% off of anything on the store while the code is active. And if you need any kind of studio, listening room, Etsy room, or anechoic chamber, we can highly recommend Dave and Viking Enterprises. As a personal sign-off too, I loved working with the team here, and I've missed seeing them in the office bright and early every morning to work on it, and we hope to see them again for future projects. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.